edition of Starry Skies. I'm Mark Hardaker.
And I'm Steve Tonkin.
And we're going to talk to you again this month about the stars, the planets, and the other things that you can see in our light skies of July.
Oh, yes, because it doesn't get properly dark right until near the end of the month.
Yeah, it's not really the astronomers' time of the year, is it, Steve? Summer is not really for us. We like dark, crispy winter nights.
Although there are bits that are worth looking at, because it's particularly in the southern sky, and I think we mentioned this last month, because you get the Milky Way going down there, and you only see it at this time of year.
Yeah.
But let's move on to what we can see in more above us.
Yeah. So what have you been doing astronomically? Did you been out this month of June?
I've been out with binoculars on a few of the clear nights, because we've had some lovely clear nights due to that high pressure that's been hanging about. But it's nice to get out, and I've been reviewing some kit for a certain magazine, which I should...
Oh, right. Yeah. So we'll talk about that a little later. Of course, we're in the short nights, as we said. There's no astronomical darkness until the end of July. But at least the summer solstice is behind us. That means that the days are, sadly for our tourists down here in the south, but the days are getting shorter and the nights are getting longer slightly. But we should, by the end of the month of July, at least have a few days, a few hours of darkness.
Indeed.
Now, one thing we did do in the month, though, is we had an Astronomical Society trip, didn't we?
Ah, that was wonderful. You might have heard of Sir William Herschel, a musician who was also a telescope maker, and he discovered the planet Uranus.
So we went across to see his museum, which is in the city of Bath. A group of us from Fordingbridge and from Wessex Astronomical Societies. And again, a bit of a plug for those two societies. Great clubs to join if you're interested, even vaguely in astronomy. Wessex Astronomical Society or Fordingbridge Astronomers. Both great places to meet like-minded people. And you can be either an expert or not, just a novice.
Complete novice.
All welcome you.
And the Fordingbridge Astronomers meeting in July is going to be, it's our equipment evening, so people come and show and tell, or if you've got something that you want to know how to use and get some hints on that, bring it along and somebody will help you get the best out of anything you've got astronomical.
Yeah, that's one of our highlights of the year, actually, at the Fordingbridge Astronomy. That is the third Wednesday in July, which I think is the 19th. Anyway, please look that up, dear listeners. It's the third Wednesday in July. And as I said, we'll be present at the Elm Tree in Hightown near Ringwood. And bring along your gear and we'll have a look and show you how to use it.
Unfortunately, you've missed the Wessex Astronomical Society meeting this month, because that was on Tuesday the 4th.
Right. So, anyway, let's crack on with the planets and talk about what they're all doing this month of July. It's going to be, we just had a full moon on the 3rd of July, so the next new moon, when it's dark again, will be on July the 17th. So, by that time, of course, it will be getting a little darker. So, that's where the moon will be. First planet out, Mercury.
Yes, and the time to see Mercury is actually on the 19th of June, where it's has to be just below a very, very thin crescent moon. So it's low in the evening twilight. Find the moon and have a look below it, and you might see this little sparkle of light. If you're going to try doing it with binoculars, please wait until the sun has set, so you've got no chance of looking at the sun.
Mercury is very difficult to see. You can never see it in a dark sky. It's always pretty close to the sun, as it's the nearest planet then, of course.
Yeah.
But it's a challenge to see, and it's very nice to see it. You only get a few days of the month to see it, and this will be a good time, 19th of July.
19th of July, yep.
However, you can't miss Venus.
Oh, no, you can't. Venus and Mars are very close together at the beginning of the month, so Venus is the very, very bright planet. You can see it during broad daylight if you know exactly where to look with the unaided eye, but they're very, very close together. The two, the female and male principles in the planets, if you look at what the ancients thought about these, the goddess of love and the god of war, and just have a look for them, and they gradually separate during the month.
Yeah. You can't miss Venus, of course. It's brilliant and has been these past few months since almost since Christmas in the west. But we're going to lose it at the end of July. It's getting lower and lower in the sky, and it will disappear in next month in August. It will pass between us and the sun. And we will see it again in September or October, again in the morning sky. So it passes between the Earth and Sun, and you'll see it later in the year in the morning. Yeah. So next up, when Mercury and Venus and Mars has set in the evening, the next planet to rise in the east will be the ringed planet Saturn.
Indeed. And again, to find that, make sure you can identify that properly. Look just above and to the left of the moon on the 6th. It'll be the bright star just above and left of the moon on the 6th of July. And if you've got a little telescope, have a look at it, and you should be able to make out the rings.
And definitely, for those that haven't seen it, the view of the ringed planet Saturn through a telescope is a serious wow moment.
It is. Mark counts wows when he's showing people the skies.
Indeed, we take our telescopes out and for public outreach events, and it's just marvellous to have a queue of people having a look at Jupiter or particularly Saturn. They come up to the eyepiece and go, where is it? Oh, wow. And I count the wows. I got 25 wows tonight, Steve. Right.
Oh, gosh, I only got 21.
And I remember the first time I saw the planet Saturn through a telescope. It was the 15th of August, 1967. So it gives my age away a bit. And it was a true wow moment. And from then on, I've been addicted ever since. So do come along to our Astronomical Society events if you can. And we'll wow you with views through our telescopes.
Indeed.
So after Saturn, the next one to come up around 1 o'clock in the morning, and brilliant, can't miss it, in the east, is the planet Jupiter, which is in the constellation of Aries. You can't miss that, and it's going to be beautiful all the way through autumn time into winter.
Yeah, no, this is it's lovely. Again, if you have a small telescope or even binoculars, you can see the moons that Galileo saw. But with a small telescope, you'll also see markings on it. So you're beginning to see planetary detail, and you may even spot what's called the Great Red Spot, which is a bit of a misnomer because it's actually salmon pink, but it's
and it's not great at the moment.
It's not. It's shrinking.
Yeah, historically it was a huge thing.
Yeah.
A big storm on the surface of Jupiter that was very visible, and even as I recall back 20, 30 years ago, it was definitely more visible than it is today.
Yes, indeed.
So it's just the red spot today, and it's the pink spot.
It's pink. It's salmon pink.
Yeah. We'll have to get that changed as well, won't we?
Oh, yes.
So, here we are on Forest FM with Starry Skies, and we're going to go on to the constellation of the month.
Which is?
Well, this month we've decided to pick a not such a bright constellation, but one that has a number of interesting objects, and that's the constellation of Hercules, which, as we look in our brightly lit July skies, if we look due south and tip our heads back almost overhead, we can see the constellation of Hercules up there. So who's Hercules? Well, he is a demigod, right? You know him from the Greek legends and so on. But he was a demigod, which means he was half god and half mortal, half human. So his dad was Zeus, and his mother was Alcime, and he was, of course, the famous strong man of the Greek myth, and was given his 12 labours to do by Zeus. Most of them were meant to be impossible for him to do, but he managed to complete them all. He killed the Nemean lion.
He did.
Right, which was an unkillable lion, could not be damaged by any weapon, but Hercules strangled the thing, apparently, and the gods put the lion in the sky. That's a constellation of Leo.
Oh, the Augean stables is the one that I thought was just brilliant. He had to clean out these absolutely filthy stables, and he had to do it quickly. So what he'd do is just diverted a river through them, which was, what What better way to do things?
But eventually he got put into the sky, upside down, the poor lad. So when you look to the south and look up in the sky, you actually see his head lower than his feet, and you see a very easily recognised asterism or group of stars up there in the shape of a keystone.
What's a keystone, Mark?
A keystone is that piece of stone built at the top of an archway that keeps the strength of an arch.
Yeah.
So it is that a rhombus? Come on, mathematician.
No, it's not.
What is
it? It's a trapezium.
Is it a trapezium?
It's a trapezium, and it's broader at the top than at the bottom.
Yeah.
Now, the nice thing about this trapezium, and we'll have a map on the Forest FM fan page, is it helps you to locate a few other objects. You're going to need at least binoculars for this. So if you look at the trapezium, the bottom right-hand star, which is called Zeta, and the top right-hand star, it's called Eta, you go 2/3 of the way from the bottom one to the top one, and with binoculars you'll see what looks like an out-of-focus star, and it's actually a thing called a globular cluster,
right.
which is... The clue's actually in the name. It's a cluster of stars. It's globular, so it's round, and it contains a few 100,000 stars in this densely packed ball of stars. Binoculars, you'll see it as a defocused star. A small telescope, you'll start being able to resolve individual stars in it. And they're marvellous things to look at.
Absolutely. And this object is called M13. It was not discovered by Charles Messier, but catalogued by him. And if you have a look at the map on our fan page, on the Forest FM fan page, and we'll put up a picture not only of where the globular cluster M13 is to be found, but a picture of it from my telescope. I'll put that up there too.
Yeah, that was a good picture, Mark, so yes.
That resolves it into stars, and you can really imagine if you were at the centre of that cluster, looking out from one of the planets in the centre there, the sky will be full of stars.
Yep. It would be like broad daylight all the time.
Yeah, it would. It'd be an absolutely tremendous view. But that's not the only globular cluster in Hercules. A little further north...
Oh, yes. So, again, it's a 2/3, 1/3 thing. Look for the star Iota on the map. And so, 2/3 of the way from Eta, one we just talked about, to Iota... It's slightly smaller, but it's easier to resolve into stars. There's another one called M92. Again, Charles Messier catalogued this. And that's another little globular cluster. Fine things to look at.
Yeah, very, very nice. And generally easy to find as fuzzy stars. And these globular clusters are some of the oldest clusters of stars you can see. Some of them are almost as old as the universe itself, 10 to 12 billion years old.
Yeah.
The stars in them are very old, worn-out stars, and the whole thing, M13 and M92, revolve around our galaxy, around the Milky Way. So they're not actually within the Milky Way, they're just on the outskirts, sort of like orphans rotating around our galaxy.
Indeed. But just next to it, there's another lovely little constellation, just this curve of stars in the sky, which is called the Northern Crown, or Corona Borealis. And Mark's a real fan of what are called variable stars. So why don't you tell us about the variable star that you've been looking at there, Mark?
Variable stars. Well, it's become a bit of a hobby of mine in the last few months as we've come into the summer. You can't look at faint galaxies and clusters in summer because it's too bright even at midnight. So I've started getting into variable stars, which are stars that, as the name suggests, vary their brightness. Now, some of them do that because they've been eclipsed by another nearby star, so they regularly go up and then down and up and down as the companion passes in front of them. And some of them are just irregular variables. They pulsate, and they get brighter and then dimmer on an irregular basis. But the one I want to talk about today is called R Corona Borealis, and this will also be on the map that we put on the fan page. And R is a most unusual variable star. It's to all intents and purposes a normal star for 2 to 3 years, and then suddenly it just disappears. It's normally just on the fringe of naked eye visibility in the constellation of Corona Borealis, and you can look at it with your binoculars most nights and it doesn't change. It's just on the fringe of naked eye, as I said. And then suddenly, for no apparent reason at all, it plunges in brightness so you can no longer see it in binoculars. And in fact, you need a big telescope to see it where it is right now. It's just in the middle of a fade. For those astronomers around, it's down to magnitude 10.2, which means you need a good size, at least 6-inch telescope to see it. And guess what? Do you know how the mechanism works, Steve? I'm sure.
Yes. Well, you probably know that stars fuse hydrogen to form helium, but they fuse helium to form other things that you've heard of, like carbon and oxygen and nitrogen and stuff like that, because stars are element factories. So everything that's not hydrogen in the universe is actually made inside a star.
So we're made of star stuff, aren't we?
We are stardust. We are golden, or we're nuclear waste, whichever way you want to look at it. But it's so what you get is it produces a lot of carbon, and as this carbon cools, it condenses. So effectively, it's soot. So you get this layer of soot around the star, which is why it dims. And then gradually the radiation pressure from the star forces that soot away, and as it goes away, the star brightens again, and we can see it again more easily.
So this dimming is going to take usually around about a month, maybe a bit less than that, 3 weeks before the star will return to brightness. So have a look in on the star chart, which we've put on the fan page. See if you can find where R will be, and then watch it return to normal brightness during the month of July, possibly into August. And then you can follow it. It might be another year before it does that again, but it's an interesting thing to follow.
It is indeed. There's another couple of things you can look for. So if R is not available, because it hasn't brightened enough yet, then other things you can look for is the star Nu, Corona Borealis. You can just make out with your naked eye that it's actually two stars. Binoculars, it's very obviously two stars, so that's a double star. And just a little bit above that, look for the star on the chart, which is Tau, like a T, Corona Borealis. And you look at that, and you're going to need binoculars for this. You look at that star and you'll see it's a star in a line of stars, almost straight line of stars. And this is a little group of stars for anybody who thinks that all stars are the same colour, because they are all different colours.
Yeah, and each of them making elements that will make the future grandchildren and children.
Yeah, or whatever. Yes, indeed.
We should also point out, shouldn't we, that when Steve refers to Nu and Tau there, that's the Greek letters that astronomers use to identify the top at least 25 or 6 stars in a constellation. So the brightest is Alpha, the second brightest is Gamma, all the way down to Mu or Micron and so forth.
Yeah.
So we use Greek letters. Right?
Usually it's like that. Yeah, there's 24 Greek letters we can use for that. Yeah. But some of them, they're just sort of numbered, they're lettered in order. So the stars of Cassiopeia, for example, the bright stars there, are just in order from left to right on the W. Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta, Epsilon.
Yeah. And that was just lazy astronomy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Instead of doing it in brightness order, they just went, let's call it Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta.
Well, because stars vary in brightness, brightness order doesn't always work either. So.
That's true. Exactly. The other thing we wanted to talk about this month was, what about the apps on your phone? There's such a lot that technology has provided us these days that we didn't have when Steve and I were kids, and that is astronomy apps on your telephone. So you can actually use downloaded products to help you find your way through the sky. And Steve and I have got 2 each that we really like to use, and you can go and download these. I think all of them for both iPhone and Android. I think I'm right in saying that. But so let me start off with my favourite, which is called Stellarium. Stellarium, you can download it for your desktop as well, or your laptop, and it's available for both Android and iPhone. And I find that a really very good app. It shows you exactly what the sky is like live. You can zoom in and zoom into all the objects that we mention here on Forest FM. On Starry Skies, and it's really a very nice app. You use it too, Steve, don't you?
Yes, I've got that, which is it's a great one for showing people the initial way of using an app. But I have another one which I use much more actually, which is called Sky Safari.
Right.
And now it comes in various flavors, shall we say. There's the basic one, which is great when you're starting out, and then it has two other ones for that. And it goes a little bit deeper than Stellarium. I use the one called the Plus version. And actually, you can get these apps to actually drive your telescope as well.
Yeah.
So that's but there's lots of apps. Find one that you enjoy using.
Yeah.
What else do you use, Mark?
And I think also all of them we can hold up to the sky, and the compass in the device will help you identify a bright star. You wonder what that star is, you hold your phone up towards it and it says, aha, that's Arcturus or that's Jupiter. So,
provided your phone compass hasn't been affected by iron or something like that.
That's true. Another app that I use all the time, sometimes it frustrates me, but it's very useful for planning whether or not I'm going to take the telescope outside. And that's a little app called Clear Outside. Clear Outside. And that gives me a clue, let's say, as to whether tonight or tomorrow is going to be a clear, starry night. Because obviously if you're setting your telescopes up, that's quite a bit of time, can be a bit of a hassle, and you don't want to be doing it if it's not going to be clear that night. So I use that every night just to check whether it's going to be cloudy this week or next, and very useful. Clear Outside. You use that too, Steve, don't you?
I use that as well, yeah. Another one I find really useful for that, there's one called Lunar Sol Cal, and that gives you, it shows you what the sun and the moon are doing. So you can get things like sunset times and twilight times, but you can also see when the moon is likely to be too bright to do much other observing. So it's a useful app for that, because you don't just want clear weather. Those of us who like looking at the faint stuff in the sky also need a dark sky, so it can tell us when the moon's out the way or when the sky's got really dark after sunset.
And we'll put a link to those 4 apps on the fan website.
Yep.
On the Forest FM fan website for this month. So just as a last plug for the end of the month, please come and see us at the local astronomical societies. Let me repeat, that's Wessex Astronomical Society, meets every second Tuesday in the month.
No, it's the first Tuesday.
First Tuesday in the month.
Yes, occasionally it has sometimes a second. The second when the first one's next to very close to, say, New Year's Day or something like that, but usually it's first.
And we meet at the Allendale in Wimborne, so that's for the southern Dorset team. And then up at in the Fordingbridge area, the Fordingbridge Astronomers, we meet on the 3rd Wednesday of the month. That's why I'm getting mixed up.
Yeah.
We meet at a pub. We meet at the Elm Tree in Ringwood. Beer is available. And we have a fun evening together, not just talking about astronomy, but just things in general. So come and see us. And, of course, don't forget to listen to Forest FM, where you'll get your monthly feed of Starry Skies, and we'll be back again next month after our summer holidays.
We will indeed. So, farewell, everybody. Have a lovely month.
Thanks very much. See you next month.